Hey guys, time once again for another episode of Day in the Life of Vintage Classic Specialist. So today I worked almost primarily on the 69 Kellogg bug. So I started messing around with the front suspension on it, and I was going to take over, well, I did actually take over the trailing arms and the beam itself over to my buddy Brian Roth at let's see, what's his shop's name? Roth Vintage. Yeah, sorry about that. Anyway, yeah, I took it over to Brian, and I was gonna have him put in new ball joints on the front trailing arms, and the trailing arms looked like they had quite a bit of wear on them. In fact, here, let's step outside for a second. We don't go outside on these too often, do we? So, yeah, here they are. And I just saw a lot of wear on the bearing surfaces of these, and they looked kind of questionable. The ball joints were really wore. Can you see that? That's not supposed to move like that. The beam itself, I don't know if you'll be able to see, the bottoms of the beam were pretty chewed up, like it had dragged on the ground a lot. And so Brian Roth and I started looking at it, and we started kind of test fitting the arms back in it. They had a ton of play, and you could actually hear them kind of clunking around in the middle. So not so much the outer bearing, which is the one that's sort of easier to replace, but the inner one, which is a bushing. When you take the arm and kind of do this with it, you could feel it clunking around in there. So we started kind of weighing our options, and between the fact that this beam is wore out and the arms seem like they had a lot of wear on the bearing or bushing surfaces, we pretty much decided to just scrap the whole thing. And let's go back inside here. So got with my buddy Jason at Air Cooled Vintage Works, and he is going to be getting us a stock width adjustable front beam, which actually, believe it or not, is the same price as a stock width non-adjustable beam, so why not? And then we're going to be getting some good used trailing arms from him that have already been measured out and are known to be good. And then we'll have Brian Roth go ahead and pop some new ball joints in those. We'll be back in business. So probably be getting that new beam and so on Monday, I think. So this one is going to be sitting on a dolly here for the next couple business days or so. So once we kind of figured that out, I decided to move on to the back of the car, thinking that had all the parts for the for rebuilding the back brakes and so on, and his drums, or excuse me, his backing plates and everything were just crusty and crappy and ugly and rusty. So I kind of cleaned those up a little, just sandblasted them, shot some fresh paint on them. Again, just trying to be a little bit budget minded with this car, so didn't bother powder coating them, just shot a little paint on them. They look nice. They're gonna look great. No one will ever see them anyway, so totally acceptable. Anyway, so went ahead and got those cleaned up and painted, and then I thought, well, you know, since the front end, especially since the front end on this car was so wore, I decided to go ahead and see what was going on with the back. I had already bought new inner and outer seals for the rear axles anyway, so I figured I would do what I've done on other cars, which is pull the bearings out and clean them, and then if any of them were bad, just replace them. These bearings and everything were terrible, and in fact I saved this just for you guys. One of the bearings here, you can see this is the outer bearing on the driver's side. When I started removing it, it pretty much came out in pieces. So here's the inner bearing race, which came out in two parts, and then the actual little rollers just started falling out. Eventually the outer race and the cage came out. I mean, so given the condition of that bearing, I didn't even bother cleaning or checking the other ones because they're disgusting and they look like they've probably also been equally abused. So this car is getting all new bearings in the back and new seals, which I had already bought inner and outer for both sides. And so the bearings, hopefully get those tomorrow. My buddy Dave Griner over at Performance Motoring is getting the bearings for me. He's going to try and get a quick turnaround on those. So hopefully tomorrow, the back of this guy is going to go back together. So stub axles, and then go ahead and build the brakes out and so on. I did also, one of my more recent Wolfsburg West orders, I went ahead and ordered the front and rear transmission mounts and hardware and so on. So I may actually even go ahead and pop the transmission in this before too long. Although now that I think about it, sorry, I'm kind of like thinking in real time here while I'm talking. I'll probably go ahead and hold off on the transmission because there's no hurry on that, and focus on getting the wiring harness in. So you can see we left sort of a stub of the original one, so enough to pull it up over the fender, which is pretty easy on these cars. The rest of it, I think I mentioned before, runs along the floor, and then it kind of goes up the kick panel area and then up into the front. So easier than older Bugs where it runs over the roof and you got to kind of pull it all the way along the roof. These, there's just a very short section. You're kind of pulling it over part of the back fender, and then from there it's almost just exposed the whole way. So I'll probably go ahead and start in on the wiring. But yeah, so more parts on order. His chromed and detailed Fuchs are supposed to come in, I think, next week. And I already have his front disc brakes and drop spindle kit. I already have his rear drums, which are drilled for Fuchs. And yeah, so this thing's gonna start coming together pretty soon here. Just gotta wait on a few more parts and, you know, start pulling wiring and be getting this thing together in no time here. On this guy here today, all I really did, kind of last thing I did today was went ahead and assembled the rear brakes for the most part. They're almost done. The emergency brakes are not hooked up yet because I actually need to make an extension. Let's see if I'm going to be able to even see this here. Yeah, I don't feel like crawling under there right now, but the hard line where the e-brake, the conduit where the e-brake runs through is short by about maybe 4 inches or so. So I need to actually make an extension for that, at least on this side. The other side might even be a hair short. So I'm going to have to fabricate up some extensions because the length, as you can imagine, of the e-brake cable is very critical, and it's got to be right as far as the sort of hard conduit that it runs through versus the actual flexible cable end versus the cable itself that runs through all that. So yeah, so I need to do a little fabrication for the brake line, e-brake line conduits here at the back of the bus. So probably need to do that pretty soon because I can't really finish the brakes until I connect the e-brakes. And the drums for this are out being machined. He said tomorrow we'll see. They're going to turn off those ribs which were interfering with the wheels. So once this all goes back together, then we'll be able to see, hopefully, fingers crossed, we're going to have adequate clearance between his giant, awesome looking wheel and tire combo and the fender. So that's it for today, guys. Hope you enjoyed this, and we will see you again tomorrow. Thanks. Bye.